All right, welcome to the Let Freedom Ring live stream. A lot to talk about here. My guest, the man behind Wicked Joyful, former comedian, the man who is
Former.
taking chicken tenders by storm, and we're going to get into that. Nick LaValle, welcome to the show.
Dan, thanks for having me, buddy.
Yeah, no, and this makes you now a two-time guest of the show, so we're super
Yeah.
excited to have you. We did an episode in studio, and now here we are on a live stream. So, but how you been since your last appearance? I think it's getting close to about a year. I want to say almost, give or take.
Wow. Time flies. Yeah. Things are good. I like the intro. I like former comedian. I like that being said.
Is that what you
'Cause-
still? That's what you told me
Well,
before.
I just think it's funny because it's like it implies like I'm not funny. Like I'm choosing not to be funny. And I mean the chicken tender initiative is also obviously a very serious thing. But yeah, I'm not doing stand up anymore, and I might get back to it, but for now I'm just not doing it. So when someone says former comedian, I think that that's just funny.
Well, before I knew you, right? Before we ever like knew each other, because we did meet at Patine Fest, but I think I'd seen an article about you in the Hippo before.
Yeah.
If you remember that. So I knew that you did comedy. So that's the Nick that I never knew there was more to Nick
There's a
than
lot. I
that.
feel like I've worn many hats. I still do, but part of the chicken tender initiative, and we'll get into it, but like part of it's like I just want to live a more authentic self. And you've got questions you're going to ask me, and I did do stand up for just over 10 years, and I produced that weekly show at the Shaskeen to my best bro Dave for a long time, and like I don't know, I just felt like I was wearing different hats too often and not necessarily. And towards the end of like doing stand up, I felt like I wasn't sure if that was an act, if it was really who I was on and off stage. I don't know. I was just growing up. So,
I think though, and we've talked about it though, comedy can get even funnier as you get older because there's a lot of stuff in our everyday life that's pretty damn funny.
oh, for sure. And like, I just, I just didn't know what I was doing with stand up as a medium anymore. I just didn't know if that was the best representation of self. And
Okay.
I think the only way that I could, honestly, the only way I could become a better stand up was if I stopped doing it for a while and kind of reevaluated. And also, when you do something for that long, like I sacrificed all other parts of life and experiences, so because I spent I obviously have a day job in a professional career. And then also I was, spending my nights and weekends chasing the dragon that is stand up comedy. So it didn't leave a lot of room for personal growth, experiences, and other things. And when the pandemic hit, it was a nice little stop. I couldn't, I literally could not get up on stage and perform. So instead, I found other things to do. I found and this other creative endeavor I had, which was making custom action figures and branding it
It's
Wicked
true.
Joyful.
Yeah.
That went viral. So, you know, I look at
You're a
it, I
creative
look at,
guy.
yeah, I am. I'm an artist. And, it took a while for me to accept that. A lifetime of like playing music and doing stand up and always having creative side hustles and endeavors. But to just say, yeah, I'm an artist, whether I'm a performing artist or I'm creating things, like that's who I am. Um, and it's taken me a lifetime to kind of have self acceptance with that.
No, and I'm glad you addressed that because we've talked, off air and stuff about, your comedy career and how you feel about it, and I think that's really cool. And if you ever got back in, I'm supporting.
Yeah, and I think, maybe I will. And that's why I never made this grand exit. I think that would have been very silly to say like I'm not doing stand up anymore. Never, like, who knows? There was a time in my life when from when I was 18 until about I was 24, 25, I played in a fairly successful like regional like punk ska band that had really cool experiences. And I just kind of got burnt out playing music. stopped playing music. 10 plus years later, I started playing music again. So, it can happen. It's just shifting mediums, but I've never stopped being creative.
All right, I like that. I
Yeah.
like that, and that's super cool. And so, which kind of wants it's a good segue into this here because this is being talked about quite a bit on social media, on the internet. Um, Manchester, New Hampshire, the chicken tender capital of the world.
Yeah.
I want to get into this first. You're a
Let's do it.
Manchester resident.
Mhm.
Um, Tell us a little bit about this because this is not you've been a Manchester guy your whole life. Is that correct?
For the most part, yeah. I lived in Boston briefly and Beverly, Mass. briefly. Yeah.
And so, basically, why do you love the city of Manchester so much, other than it being your hometown?
Well, I love Manchester. I think what makes Manchester great is number one, it's people. We are unique. We are unique. I think we are blue collar, hardworking, salt of the earth type people. Uh, Also, we're kind of our own worst enemy. And I was trying to figure that out, right? Because we have so much pride in where we're from, but we don't necessarily, we have so much pride of being like from New England, right? But we don't necessarily have too much pride in self. And I was a comic who never said he was from Boston, always said I'm from Manchester, New Hampshire. And I relied on self deprecating humor a lot. And I think that people from Manchester are inherently self-deprecating. I think that's what made me kind of have a little bit of success, being from Manchester and getting the types of gigs that I had, the opportunities I had, because that was authentic, that self-deprecating humor. But it also gets us in the way of growth, not only as self, but as a city. And even our nicknames are, insidious. Manch Vegas, Manchganistan. It's to me that's insidious. Why associate where you're from and in a way who you are with this negative kind of energy? Uh, you go visit Chicago and there's so much pride in self visiting a place like Chicago, and people are proud to be from Chicago. Why? There's arts and culture and it's amazing. I love the city of Chicago. But then you look at someplace like New Haven, Connecticut. New Haven, Connecticut, they've had their fair share of issues in New Haven, homelessness, drug issue. Every city has that. But that's not the first thing that comes to mind when you think of New Haven, right? First thing that comes to mind is pizza. Great pizza. Pizza that people travel from all over the country to have. And I want to see that energy in Manchester because we are the birthplace of the chicken tender. 1974, the chicken tender was invented at the Backroom Puritan restaurant. And I've lived a lifetime. I don't remember a time before the Manchester style tender. And there's now several generations of people that feel the same exact way. They don't remember a time before the tender. It's always been there. And it's never truly been celebrated in any way, shape, or form, right? But how many weddings, bar mitzvahs, birthday parties, holiday parties has the chicken tender been served? So I want to basically help establish a brand identity for Manchester, New Hampshire. And what better way to honor something that was invented here, the chicken tender? And I believe it's a uniter. It brings people together. And the funny thing about it is, no one disputes that Manchester is the birthplace of the chicken tender, but we all have strong opinions on
That I
who
was gonna.
has the best chicken tender.
I was going to ask you this. So this can be proven that that's where it started was the back room.
Yeah, that's concrete. That's concrete. That
Okay.
style chicken tender. Now the chicken finger, the chicken nugget, those could predate the
Okay.
chicken tender, but the chicken tender, as you know it, the backroom style, that was born here. And that's why I always tell people that there's an upper echelon. It's the back room, and then the great imitator, but it's so close because it's basically the same recipe, is the goldenrod. So to me, the back room and the goldenrod are basically parallel to Frank Pepe's Pizza and Sally's Pizza in New Haven. You got those top two, and then it's a menu item that's celebrated citywide. So like I love the chicken tenders at the Shaskeen, the Red Arrow, Strange Brew makes a good chicken tender, but everyone has like their favorite. And like, but now that I've kind of brought this to light, I went before the mayor and the board of aldermen in December. And if you go to Wicked Joyful on Facebook, you'll see my comments in full. I spoke at public comment, and I wanted them to recognize December 6th, 2022, that Manchester, New Hampshire is the chicken tender capital of the world. I'm hoping for an official declaration of that. And that was the first time I said it locally, but the first time I brought the idea to light was an appearance on Ari Melber's The Beat, which it's on MSNBC. I'm sure people know who Ari Melber is. He's a political pundit, talk show host on MSNBC. I was a last minute guest on that show. So national live television, my first national live television appearance, I said Manchester, New Hampshire is the chicken tender capital of the world.
When was this? Was this
That
in
was
recent time?
That was in February
Okay.
2020. So just before
Okay.
the world shut down. I said that on air, and I have that clip. I'd be happy to send it to you sometime, Dan.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that was the first time I had the idea, but it didn't come to fruition until December 2022. And then the shirt that you just showed, I'm wearing
Yeah,
one right
let's show
now.
this.
I had to wear it. Yep. So we had those. I had those made. I worked with a great illustrator, one of my favorite illustrators, Don DeLon. He did that design. Those are up on my website the following day after I made my comments, and I see this as an initiative. And I just want to get as many people as I can, wearing that shirt proudly, and also just anytime you hear someone say Manch Vegas, it's not Manch Vegas. We're the chicken tender capital of the world, or Tendertown. Like that's it. We're
Okay.
Tendertown.
I like that, and I like the pride in city. I grew up in Nashua. You bring up Manch Vegas a lot, right? And I don't live in Nashua now, but they call it Trashua. People call it
Right.
Trashua, and I'm like, that's not cool to me.
It's not.
That's never been funny. That's never been. I take pride, and it. Go ahead.
Especially someone who lives. If you're saying disparaging things about the city you live in, that speaks more to self than it does the city. Because why live somewhere if that's how you feel about it?
I agree, but I also, you take pride in where you grew up, and you still care about that community, and I feel like a lot of people. And it's funny that you bring up. You always, when you did your touring, you always brought up you're from Manchester, right?
Yes.
I feel like so many people in this area, they make it big, and I was just from Boston. New England's bigger than Boston. Okay,
Right. Well,
why?
that's always, someone would say, like, oh, where are you from? Or someone says like, oh, I'm from Boston. It's like, oh, where are you from? Back Bay, Southie, even Somerville. It's like, no, Bangor, Maine. It's like, what?
Yeah,
I always would say if it takes you more than 20 minutes to get to Fenway Park, you are not from Boston.
absolutely. I would never. I will say this. Like, I'm very proud to be from New England. Um, I'm more proud to be from New Hampshire than I am any other. I love the town I grew up or city I grew up in, but I'm really proud to be from New Hampshire, like specifically above like New England. I go into Massachusetts. I'm not that happy there. Like, I'll go to the things I need to go there, but you know what I mean? Like,
Well, I have a lot of pride in New Hampshire as well, Dan. I'm 7.5 years sober. I know that you're on a journey yourself. I'm 7.5 years sober, and I didn't really truly appreciate New Hampshire until I stopped drinking booze and I had started getting into hiking,
absolutely.
and started exploring the North Country. And now I'm so proud to be here because we are a four-season state, and there's every 3 months you got something brand new to do, right? And it doesn't
No.
cost too much to do those things. Skiing can be expensive, but
Yeah, absolutely. And in my newfound sobriety, it's something I want to get back into because I've hiked all the 48 4,000 footers, and there was nothing more rewarding than that. If that's something you can ever do, you feel like, man, like, I don't know. It's so New Hampshire. you know.
Right.
Um, but no, I love what you're doing. We're not on Merrimack TV, so if you want to promote the shirt, they can find. Where can they find it?
Yeah, so you can go to wickedjoyful.com or shop.wickedjoyful.com. And I have the merch, and it's not just about selling these t-shirts. It does help out, obviously, because I can keep doing this stuff and I can keep making cool stuff. But I do have like this other design, the Tendertown design right here.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, this is a camp flag, which is made by the folks at Oxford Pennant, which are is a Buffalo, New York based company, and it's just a real high quality pennant. I love this company. I love what they do. I made a super limited edition amount of these, but I chose the colors purple and yellow and that golden yellow because it's a regal color, obviously, like the Queen City, but it also pays homage to the Monarchs, the Manchester Monarchs.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And at first glance, this is obviously chicken tenders being dipped in duck sauce, right? But it kind of looks like I worked with Yosef on Yosef on this illustrator, and I kind of conceptualized it, and then he did the illustration. But this also looks like a lotus flower, right? And the
I can
lotus
see that.
flower represents resilience. And I think Manchester is a city that is very resilient. So there's a couple, there's some double entendres going on here. But that's the other thing you said. Why do you love the city? I think the city is resilient. I think that the Manchester, New Hampshire, is a city of reinvention. The mill buildings have been repurposed over the past, every like 10 to 50, every like 15 years, it seems like the city kind of reinvents itself. And I think we're at that point. I think it's just starting where we're going to start seeing a reinvented Manchester. You're starting to see some more housing being put up downtown. You're seeing businesses, especially some retail businesses, thriving in downtown. One thing that I think is missing from Manchester is more live entertainment. It bums me out that I've been going to shows. I just turned 44. I've been going to shows since I was 15 years old. I still have to drive an hour to see a band in a 300 to 500 capacity rock venue, right? Live music venue, I should say, whether it's a hip hop act or a rock act. It's like, why do I have to drive 2 hours to go to Portland to see an up and coming indie artist? And I can't see them in the largest city in New Hampshire.
And there's places, right? Like, I mean, obviously, coming up is probably not getting at SNHU Arena, I'm assuming.
What's that?
An up and coming band likely isn't going to get SNHU Arena, but there is other places, right, in Manchester.
Well, there's the Shaskeen, but they're 180 capacity standing room.
What's the JFK? Is that
So
even still a thing?
no, the JFK, it's a city-owned building. There has been independent shows produced there, but there's no 300 to 500 capacity venue. The Rex Theater is a 300 capacity venue, but they're tethered to the Palace, and the booking at those venues are old school, old guard. The Rex Theater is showing silent films. They're booking cover bands. They're booking. I love the Cars. I would not go see a Cars cover band why would I do that at a 300 capacity venue in Manchester? I just don't understand why the gatekeepers here just won't book young acts. I had to drive. I've had to drive to Burlington at times to see bands, but you got a venue in Boston or in Cambridge, Sinclair. It holds 500 capacity. The Royale in Boston. These are venues booked by the Bowery Presents. That's an 800 person capacity venue. The size of Manchester, 130,000 residents. If a band is playing Royale in Boston and they're going to play Aura in Portland, there's no reason why that tour can't also be routed to Manchester. And the Rex, which is 300 capacity, that's the type of venue, and for the size of our city, that should have the bands playing those two venues I just mentioned on their tour routing. But we don't get that. And I know that, you look at someone like Young Gravy, who obviously, just played this SNU Arena. He's a bit too big for the Rex, but they could have got him the last time he came around and played MGM Theater, which is a bigger venue, but for a city our size, he could have been at the Rex or the Palace. So I would just like to see the old guard in Manchester sort of change their tune and start catering to the younger demographic. And it's pretty ridiculous that when I say younger demographic in Manchester, I'm saying 50, under 50, dude.
Yeah.
21 to 50. Because right now the acts that are playing the Palace and the Rex are 55 and up, 60 and up. I don't
Yeah.
know who's going to see the Cars cover band.
I mean, I wouldn't see the Cars cover band because as much as I like the Cars, but I did see, not in Manchester, but just throw it out. You ever heard of the band Orleans?
Yes.
So the Free Jacks that they play in Quincy, Mass, they're doing this summer series and they're inviting all these bands. I didn't know who Orleans was until they started playing songs, and I went, "Holy shit!" They sung uh now I'm blanking on it. "You're Still the One,"
Right.
right? And I go, "Wait, that's the." I thought it was a cover band. So I mean, you could draw things definitely. I mean, you get a band that has a few hits too. You're gonna get more people there.
Well, I love going to shows at Aura in Portland. And at one point, pre-pandemic, Port City Music Hall in Portland. I saw this band Beach Bunny play at Higher Ground last June, and that venue's just under 1,000 capacity, and that's probably what they should be playing in Burlington. I think it's 800 capacity. So if they were to come to Manchester, it's like they could probably sell out a 300 to 500 capacity venue. That's the type of act I'd like to see coming through. Indie artists that are having a lot of success. I always see people from Manchester at these shows in Portland and in
Really,
Boston and Providence. Yeah, of
it's a
course.
big enough. It is a big enough city, and I'm hoping that this helps draw because there's a lot going on there. But like, yeah, there's
I
always room
just
for
yeah,
more.
so I just think like we need to, you know, you want to start, it starts with self. I think the Chicken Tender Capital of the World initiative was a chance for me to be part of the change that I want to see in the world, right? So let's start with Manchester. Let's start with my hometown. If we start looking at ourselves a little bit differently, less Manch Vegas, more Tendertown, less self-deprecation and more, sensible pride in self and where we're from. I think that it's only going to benefit us. Uh,
Absolutely,
there's negative stuff everywhere, and
but
there's anytime, and we're trapped in this like
it's easier for people to live in the negative and be self-deprecating.
it
It's
is.
easier,
Of course, it is.
you
It,
know.
it's easier because I don't even know why that is.
I don't either.
I don't know why that is. I think the best thing any one of us can do is just think, small daily micro decisions. Just it sounds so silly, but it's like drink some more water, get a little bit of exercise, and try to find happy in things. And like, look, we all have hard days. I have difficult days. I get stressed out. There's times where I feel angry. But like Fred Rogers said, what do you do with the mad that you feel?
No, I agree. I do think it's not just, and this is just my own personal opinion here. I do think there's a population of New Hampshire that, and this is just my own opinion here. They watch television, right? They watch MTV. They watch, maybe Laguna Beach or a show based in New York. And they live in New Hampshire and they see all this stuff on TV and they think that life is just so much better everywhere else, right? I'm such a homebody. Like I like to make the where I am the best place, right? Kind of like what you're doing. But
Mhm.
I think that they compare themselves to the big cities or the beaches and stuff and then think, "Well, there's nothing to do here. It's so boring." It's if you don't love New Hampshire, you're living it wrong
I
because there's so
couldn't agree with you
much.
more. I could not agree with you more, Dan. There's so much in our backyard here. I saw a comedian recently, a New Hampshire comic. he was kind of goofing on how some woman won a trip to New Hampshire on Price is Right. And they were like, that's crazy. She was in LA and she won a trip to Price is Right. Or this woman was in LA and she won a trip on the Price is Right to visit New Hampshire. And he was poking fun at that. And it's like, people travel from all over the world to hike our mountains,
Yeah.
and like vacation at the lakes. We're the gateway to New England. People consider New Hampshire the gateway to New England. We're just I don't really care for when we say that, we're close in proximity to other stuff, but I get it. We're a couple hours drive from so many different places that you can see in a short amount of time. But I love being from New Hampshire. And I have a great sense of pride of being from Manchester. Do I think I'll live here my entire life? Maybe not. There's other places I'd like to live. I'd like to stick to New England, but I always have a soft spot for Manchester. And while I'm still here, I want to make Manchester the best place. I want to contribute to making Manchester the best place it could possibly be. Um, so but I need help. I need people to change their mindset a little bit and find some kind of semblance of pride in being from here. I personally think it starts with the chicken tender, man, and it's because not just because of the history, how it was invented here, but how it symbolizes unity to me. No one's arguing. You can argue about the tender, who has the best, but no one's truly arguing over tenders. Who can be in a bad mood when you got a hot plate of tendies in front of you, Dan?
No, you really can't. And I definitely support the cause. So definitely check out Wicked Joyful for more. Nick, I think if you even Google this now, it's one of the biggest things that pops up. So
Yeah, just
um,
Google Wicked Joyful, wickedjoyful.com, Google chicken tender cap of the world. Mostly my stuff comes out. It was so successful, Dan. People were bootlegging the shirt, but
that happens.
but I also found irony in that because how Wicked Joyful started off was I was making my own bootleg toys. This was
Yes.
the Bill Burr fucking Star Wars action figure I made, and it's this bootleg toy art is kind of what got Wicked Joyful some notoriety. So I definitely found humor and the irony in the fact people are bootlegging the shirt. But I will say, if you buy them from wickedjoyful.com, it's the softest t-shirt in your wardrobe. And you're getting it hand packed from me here in my office. These are all my shirts.
Oh,
So
okay. No, very cool. All right, I want to talk about this real quick. I know we got off to, I don't know, I felt like we got off to almost a rocky start. I was like, am I gonna have a guest storm off set? Amazing. But just talk about your comedy career. It's pretty fascinating to me,
yeah,
and I feel like anytime I've talked to you about it, you've always kind of downplayed it. But I
yeah,
found it fascinating because I don't know many people that have done stand up comedy. I think
sure,
you might be the only one I've ever met that I know.
sure.
Um, so I want to talk about kind of your experiences. Kind of, I really, at the Shashkeen, everything you did. But I mean, I have a lot of questions because I think this was kind of fascinating. I found you on YouTube and you performed at the Laugh Factory. And
Yeah.
anybody that knows anything about comedy, that's a pretty fucking big deal. Um, what was that experience like?
So how that came about was I was living obviously I was living in Manchester and I was doing stand up and I started making like funny YouTube music videos and I done one with Sally Struthers, who's an actress on All in the Family. She was a very much celebrated actress of the 70s and 80s. So I was doing stand up, making these funny music videos, and then I'd put out this album with the accompaniment videos, and it got the ear of Jamie Masada, who's the owner of the Laugh Factory. And I got an email one day from his assistant that was just like, "Hey, Jamie got your stuff. We loved it, and he'd love to talk to you. What's your phone number?" So I got home from work that day. It was a Friday at like 5 o'clock, and I got a Los Angeles or Hollywood phone number popped up on my cell phone, and it was Jamie Masada. And he has a very distinct voice. And if you Google Jamie Masada, I mean, he's the guy who got Jamie Foxx on In Living Color. He helped Jim Carrey early on in his career, among other things. And Jamie just said the sweetest things to me. He said, "Not only are you hilarious, you're very smart." And he said, "You're welcome to do our clubs whenever you want." So within like a week or two, I found myself like on the Laugh Factory website. Like I had my bio and photo like everyone else did. And that then the following summer I did the newly opened Chicago. The first time I did Laugh Factory was LA, Hollywood. I did 2 sets there, I think. And then I have a poster from it, which is crazy. I have a poster from it.
Oh
So
wow.
this was the first show I did. There I am with TJ Miller and my friend Brody Stevens.
Oh wow.
We became friends shortly after that. But that was the first time I did Laugh Factory, and that was where the clip was from. And that's the story. And I've done the LA venue a handful of times. I did the Chicago room a lot because I would go to Chicago like every like 2 to 3 months, long weekends, and just like crash on friends' couches and try to get as many sets as I could. So I do like a couple sets at the Laugh Factory, a couple sets at the Comedy Bar, and then like DIY shows. And I would try to just spend like Thursday to Sunday night there, or like maybe take Friday and Monday off from work and do like an extended long weekend. But that was good because that was like the first real credit I got, and that helped me get my foot in the door around here. But it was also a struggle because, I also think that New Englanders have this like chip on our shoulder. So I felt like when I got that was a break for me. And I felt like when I got that, it wasn't greeted with excitement. It was greeted like with the attitude, like, "What do you think, you're better than me?"
Oh yeah,
So
yeah.
to me, I think like New England, New England's definitely where the chicken tender was invented, and it's specifically in New Hampshire. And then New England is invented the phrase, "What do you think, you're better than me?" or something. So,
I can see that.
that was I was kind of greeted with that versus excitement. And I didn't think I was better than anyone because I'm a New Hampshire boy who's super insecure and relies on self-deprecating humor. So it's this awful cyclical thing where it's like always going back to self-deprecating, always going back to insecurity. And I don't want to live my life like that anymore. And it was every time I got a break with stand-up, like Laugh Factory, opening for Bo Burnham, opening for Dice Clay at the Wilbur in Boston, all these like exciting things that should be exciting, I would always just end up beating myself up over because like I did so well at those shows that I mentioned. I rarely ate it at the Laugh Factory. But still you're constantly beating yourself up doing stand up. That's one of the reasons why I got out, Dan, is again, I just didn't want to beat myself up anymore.
Yeah, I feel like that's like because I've heard that we've had a lot of professional wrestlers on the show, and they've talked about similar things. And it's like, is that just like a showbiz thing where like everybody's trying to make it, and there's just turns into when people start making it or they start climbing up, there's this like resentment that obviously you can't. You're doing your thing, they should be doing their thing, and it becomes like this jealousy thing that where they can't be happy for you.
Yeah. I just saw I had friends I witnessed friends experience the highest of highs. I had friends experience the lowest of lows. People, someone who had become a friend of mine who took his life. And I have no doubt in my mind that stand up was a contributing factor to that. I have no doubt in my mind. And I just didn't want to, I couldn't participate in something that was relying on self-deprecation and almost like accepting of beating myself up over things. Like I had to find myself in a more positive place. And when people ask why I don't do stand up anymore, for now, I like to say I just wasn't seeing a good return on investment. right? Now, when you think return on investment, you're only thinking financially. Um, I see it more as the investment being time and the return being emotional experience, right? So the emotional experience um, wasn't adding up to the amount of time I was investing in it. So if the return on investment isn't good, then maybe it's time to move on. And now I've had this time off from it, and I'm just in a better mood. I'm finding more ways to be creative. Um, it's enabled my continued sobriety, doing the custom action figures and the chicken tender initiative. And then also it's freed my time up to focus on my professional career that in community media that I've had for 20 years, and also allow me to have a stronger focus with personal relationships. Um, I have a girlfriend, humble brag, and and just strengthen the friendships I've had with my friends. I have less friends now, but the friends I shouldn't say I have less. There's less people that I'm in contact with, right? Because I'm not out doing stand up and having that like network of comedians. But the friends that I do talk to more regularly now, I feel like the bond is stronger because I have there's more time. It's quality over quantity. Maybe that's what it is.
Did you find did it when you left comedy, did your sobriety have any impact? Was that any factor or anything like that, or that was more just like I'm moving on, or
I think. Well, I think those closest to me, like the comedians that I'm still close with now, one of the first things they'd probably say was when Nick got sober, Nick got better. Like I was way better. I was way more sharp. I was way more clear headed. I was way more fun to be around when I got sober. Um, and fortunately, I was never tempted. There's always booze around doing stand up. Hell, half the time that's how you're getting paid.
yeah,
So
yeah.
especially if you're hosting or even if you're a feature, it's like you're not making the big bucks. Like you're really just doing it because you want to do it, and it's social, it's fun, and also you get to grow and learn. So, but the first it's hard to judge time, but I'd say like my first like if I got sober in 2015, right? And let's say I stopped doing stand up when the world ended temporarily in 2020. Those 5 years, like the first 3 years of my sobriety from like 2015 to 2018, I was so sharp on stage, and I wrote stuff about being sober, and I was getting really great gigs, and I was opening for my heroes, and 5 shows with Tom Green, and I had friends who were coming up, Emma Willman, Jenny Zagrino, getting Comedy Central specials. So like they'd have me open for them at colleges and in theaters or whatever, and clubs. So like that was really fun and exciting. And then like then like Brody passed, and I kind of started losing the luster. And I thought I knew it was kind of time that it was only a matter of time that I was going to kind of bow out. And then just before the pandemic hit, that's when like I got Ari Melber, Wicked Joyful Figures started popping off and going viral, and then the world ended. So it kind of forced my hand and like, okay, I'm gonna focus on this other thing I'm doing now. And I've never been happier. Truly.
No, no, I like that. And I will say that just speaking on the sobriety piece, like you had a little bit of impact on me too, because I listened to a lot of people that had given up drinking, right? And I know we had talked about that before. And I remember thinking, he's talking so well of this. I was like, man, I just knew that I was too far gone, right? And I was just like, I wish I could have that. Right? Like you were an example of someone that talked about being sober that I was like, man, I wish I had that. Like I really wish I had that. But and I knew I
Uh,
just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it the
You
way my alcoholism was so on another level that I had to go
sure.
seek help, you know.
And I'm glad you did, Dan. And that story's that's not unique. That's
Yeah.
um I had lots of starts and stops. And then the time that it worked was it was a time that I wanted it. 20 November 3rd, 2015. I just woke up, I just wanted it. And I quit right there. It was cold turkey. There was fortunately for me, I didn't have like a a traumatic, we'll say a traumatic low. Like fortunately, I never hurt anyone. I didn't necessarily hurt myself. I didn't lose a job. I didn't get in a bar fight. And I was a professional alcoholic. So, and I guess
Yeah.
you know, and but uh, I guess the point I'm making is you've for you, it seems like you finally found a time where you wanted it, and you're going to spend the time doing it. I think you're going to stay the course. I believe it.
No, I really appreciate that. And, it's always good to talk about that stuff with guests that, gotten sober. But yeah, I just want to let you know that because I don't think I ever even told you that. Like there was a
I
couple times
appreciate it.
you were on my mind about that. You were talking about it, and I was like, I want that. Um, I was just not at a point where I could get it yet, right? So,
Yeah. When you can
um,
call me, you can call and text me anytime, and maybe this summer we should do some hikes together.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But I don't really. I want to ask one other question, and then I just want to do buy or sell. Did you see Clerks 3 at all?
Yes, loved it. Saw it in the theater opening weekend.
Okay, and I knew I had a feeling you might have been into that. I don't want to give out too many spoilers, but I had to think about that. That really was a good way to end it.
Yeah. I loved I think we talked about this. I really do think that movie is it's a great movie for dudes like us to watch
Absolutely.
because it's about accepting emotional growth. Um, I don't particularly care for well, I don't want to use the term toxic masculinity, right? But like I do think that that's a thing. I do think that masculinity can be toxic. And I think that because I think that men sometimes have a hard time sharing their feelings and expressing themselves and emoting. I personally, I've rarely had a time that I didn't mind expressing myself and emoting. I'm a very open person, and it's only gotten better as I've gotten older, especially with sobriety and talking about my feelings, talking about my emotions, and trying to keep those things in check. And that to me, that's what I got out of Clerks. It was nice to see these guys, a few years older than me, but um, thinking about their own mortality and uh, being honest with each other.
Yeah, and it hits so close to home. Like, if Kevin Smith, I believe, had the heart attack, and all I could think of and I knew right away. I'm like, okay, this has to do with Kevin. This is, what he said in interviews was Clerks was always about me. You know
Right.
what I mean? Yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I was a little watching the movie being like, "What are they doing?" And then when it kind of clicks, you're like, "Wow, this whole fucking thing's come full circle." You know,
Right.
and
I
it
thought I
wasn't
thought it was
just.
done very really well. It was really excellent.
I agree because I was expecting something like Clerks 2.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so highly recommend this. I do want to get into buy or sell real quick. I'm just going to give you a quick topic. You tell me if you're buying or you're selling it. Uh, it's coming up on its final season. They just announced it's coming, but we don't know when. Cobra Kai, this whole experience with Cobra Kai, you buying or selling?
I'm buying. I'm buying. I've been slow to it. I think I'm at the tail end of season 3. There's been 4 posted, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
So
so I'm
I
at the
think
tail end of season 3 right now.
okay. I've really enjoyed it. It's made some stars. It looks like Diaz has a movie now where he's gonna be a superhero. If I saw that
Blue,
trailer right.
Blue Beetle, yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Kevin Smith in 2023.
Buying. He did a reboot of the Masters of the Universe. Behind me, by the way, is like my Masters Universe setup. Like that's the Eternia playset.
Okay.
Which side am I on? This side, that's the Eternia playset. I got the Snake Mountain there, Castle Grayskull over here. He did a reboot called Master Universe Revelations. I thought it was cool. I thought the animation style was great. I love Kevin Smith. I don't always like him, but I'll always love him because he was one of the first people. I was like 15 years old when Clerks came out on VHS, rented it from Video Thunder here in Manchester, and thought it was amazing. Like someone could make their own movie like that. Like that's something I had been doing since I was in 5th grade, but he actually showed like you could make your own movie and people would see it. So I'll always have a soft spot for Kevin Smith.
Absolutely. I agree. I love Kevin Smith. Remakes in general in this day and age, like, are you buying or selling remake movies, or do you feel like it's getting overdone?
Well, nostalgia is a hell of a drug, man.
Yeah.
I think, I don't drink booze. I'm actually off caffeine as well. I'm almost 10, I think I'm 10 weeks now with no caffeine,
Oh, wow.
but nostalgia, I go hard. So I sometimes it wears a little thin, but I'm gonna say buy. I'm gonna say light buy, like I don't want to buy, but I also kind of look like a hypocrite if I didn't say buy.
I don't want to buy in bulk.
Yes, that's a great analogy.
You know.
Yeah.
Elm Street in Manchester.
Uh I'm investing. I'm buying, but because I do believe in Manchester, and I do believe that Manchester downtown, if we can get a music venue that can fit 300 to 500 capacity venue, some more retail, some nightlife that isn't necessarily just centered around the sale of alcohol,
Yeah.
then Manchester, Elm
We're
Street
seeing a
can be
lot of
real popping.
we are seeing violence that shouldn't happen. You
Nope,
know.
and I gotta say, I think alcohol is a contributing factor.
Absolutely.
And that's
Absolutely.
no shade to the bars downtown. I think the commerce has to happen. People want to drink. People want to eat food. Obviously, drink while they eat food. So I get it, but you got to give people something to do. That isn't just alcohol. Drink consumption of alcohol being the centerpiece.
No, I get it. I get it. And I guess that's a good segue. Sobriety, buy or sell.
Oh, buy,
Yeah.
buy, and I'll buy, and I'll help. I'll help. And if people can't afford it, I'll help them out with that. We'll help each other out. How about that?
All right, love
I'll
that.
loan them a couple bucks.
Public access television.
Oh, dude, buy all the way. I'm a huge proponent of community media. I am a board member to the New Hampshire Coalition for Community Media. I've had a nearly 20-year career in the industry. I think that local media is so important right now. And no matter which town you're watching this in or which city you're watching this in, whatever state it is, support community media all the way. These are the people that cover your elected board and committee meetings. It's a primary source of information, and then there's also high school sports coverage, concerts. Joe Law and Jason Cody in Manchester do a fantastic job at Manchester Public Television. My hat's off to them always. Bedford Community TV does a fantastic job with their sports coverage. Nashua ETV is the same way. We're so lucky in New Hampshire to have so many passionate people running their community media centers. If you've never looked into it, or you just think, oh, those are those boring board and committee meetings, in so many ways, they're kind of the pulse on what's happening in your town. So pay attention.
Yeah, and that's one way to get that out there because there'd be no other way to do that.
Right.
You know.
Right.
All right. Well, and I want to say I think we've done this before, but buy or sell, the two guys that make Let Freedom Ring roll in the studio, Nick and Justin and Colin.
Oh, you're saying buy or sell?
I think this is a slam dunk. Yeah, I think I gave you a lot of buys tonight.
Oh, they're all Justin and Colin are buys. Those are great. Not just because I work with them, but what they're contributing to community media in the state as a whole is just phenomenal. And I'm so grateful to have coworkers who are so passionate about who they are and what they do. So buy all the way. They're fantastic. They're fantastic people, and we have a lot of. I wasn't going to wear my Merrimack TV hat on this in this interview, but we have a lot of fantastic community channel shows. Dan, obviously you, but I think Tina Hurley does a fantastic job with her show. Bill Souza, Janine, everyone who comes into the community TV show in Merrimack is so positive, and they get it. They get it, and that's a town that truly understands, gets, and supports community media.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, Nick. Well, I really appreciate coming on. This has been a lot of fun. Definitely want to, get that out there. The Manchester is the chicken tender capital of the world. One
Yeah,
more time.
wickedjoyful.com.
Awesome. And that's not only that. I mean, you can get t-shirts. Can you get your figures there too? Do you
Yes,
sell those? Okay.
yes. You can follow me on Instagram, Wicked Joyful, Wicked Joyful across socials. I don't have a personal social media presence, so you'll have to tag Wicked Joyful in this.
Yeah, I will have to tag that because yeah, we use Facebook quite a lot on the
Yep.
show. That's because you know why? Because I'm a millennial, and Facebook came out right when I was in college, and it's been the social media network that I have been using for almost 20 years. So,
That's how you got dates, Dan. That's how you met.
it started with AIM and then it went to Facebook, right?
Yeah.
But everybody out there, we'll be back in studio on Thursday. Actually, we got a live stream on Monday as well with Ricky Graham. But everybody out there, enjoy the rest of your night and continue to let freedom ring.
Thanks, Dan.
Yep. Thank you.
Have a good one.
You too.